All right, hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. Just me and Matty B today. Rick is out on vacation, so he's going to go, and we're going to kick it off, just go pretty quick right into it with the mailbag. I had this question. I don't know if you saw it today, Matt, but someone just asked if I saw the Derek Carr statements on Ben Roethlisberger, but Derek Carr came out today. The NFL, they do their top 100 players list. I think Tom Brady was number one for back-to-back years, unless I read the graphic wrong. But Ben Roethlisberger ended up 18th, the first time he's ever been in the top 20 of the NFL players. And I believe it's a player vote where players around the league, they vote on who they think are the top players. Ben Roethlisberger finishes up there. And, of course, David Carr, the authority on quarterbacking, quarterback success in the NFL, he came out and said that Ben Roethlisberger is definitely not a top 10 quarterback. And he said that a lot of his success is due to Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. And I'm just thinking, first off, why is David Carr getting his name in headlines? What does he even do? Basically, he's Derek Carr's... Or wait, is he the younger one? I don't even know. I'm getting him confused. Which one's which, Matt? Is David Carr...
Yes.
He's the older one, or is he the younger one?
David's the older one. David was the one that was drafted first, and I feel bad for him. I feel bad for him because the Houston Texans, with no defense, with no weapons, with nobody, he got pistol whipped when he got drafted number one overall by them. He had the potential, he had the skill set, he had the technique, the form that you would want from a franchise quarterback, and basically they took the potential star gem of their franchise and just surrounded him with paper mache and was like, yeah, that's good enough. And then he just got pummeled in the years that he was supposed to develop, and it ended up it ran him out of the league, and now he's rebounded as an NFL network analyst. But it's a sad story because going into the draft, he came out of Fresno State and was good enough to play, was drafted number one overall, had a great combine, had all the everything. But when you take a quarterback, and just like we've talked about before, when you have these quarterbacks that have all the tools, have all the intangibles, but then you put crap around them, that you expect them to take that turd sandwich and turn it into something delicious. It ain't going to happen.
Yeah, he was drafted. They didn't have any veteran support because it was was he the first draft that they had? They were an expansion team around the time. I can't remember if it's right when he came out.
Yes.
He was the first picked in the expansion draft, correct? So they went ahead, they drafted him.
Yes.
And they didn't have...
He was the only thing that they had.
They didn't draft any linemen around them. Well, I guess they did, but they didn't focus on it. So he kind of got killed the first couple years. And now, in my mind, I forget that he is the older brother. I think Derek Carr is the more successful guy. And so I thought maybe that was him. But that's his younger brother now, who's with the Raiders. So you can see. Apparently he's out somewhere. So I had someone ask if I saw it. Didn't see it. So I looked it up and saw that. I really don't pay attention to the top 100 players list. It's cool that Ben Roethlisberger's up there. But I'll go on record saying I think Aaron Rodgers was ahead of him again, and they had Drew Brees and stuff. I don't think Aaron Rodgers should be ahead of him if you're looking at stats and everything. But who am I? I know he gets a lot of the big name publicity, but I would put Ben Roethlisberger as one of the top, I'd say 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the league, not outside the top 10, Derek. Calm down, bro. You can't even think how many other quarterbacks in the league even have playoff wins. Yeah, he had a rough showing last year. But there's some drama around the locker room. I don't think it's Ben's fault. I think the team's would look a lot different with Ben out, and we've seen that because he doesn't even play the full season. So it's not like we don't get to see what it would look like without him. It's a Landry Jones nightmare, basically. So there's that. Speaking of nightmares, high tempo, we have some crazy ones this week. You want to kick yours off, Matt?
Absolutely. So one of the headlines that jumped out at me from the Seattle Times, backup quarterback Tavares Jackson, he was previously with Minnesota, dual threat quarterback. He was arrested, and I believe it was a third-degree felony that he's being charged with for pulling a gun on his wife. And the quote that really stood out to me, and I got to give credit to his wife, because he stood at basically point blank range and said, "I'm going to shoot you." And her quote, and I want to make sure that I read this correctly. She said, "You better be accurate, because you ain't accurate on the field." So in the face of potentially being shot and killed by your husband, she has the balls to come out and say to him, "You better be accurate, because you ain't on the field." Just calling him out. How is she alive?
That is
How
crazy.
does he not just completely become filled with rage and just empty the clip on her? Unbelievable.
I would just have to think that she talks like that to him all the time. She has to just give it to him, bust his balls nonstop, because
Yeah.
you're right. You would think a statement like that would set her off or set him off, but I don't know. It's just a crazy situation that he would have the balls to pull it out and then get hit with a zinger like that. That's just outrageous. And then on the other side, then we had police that are investigating the house. They didn't come out and say it, but Janoris Jenkins, the New York Giants quarterback, he is away at their training camp, and they found a dead body in his house or outside the house. Roosevelt Ren, I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm probably butchering it, but 25-year-old. And it was a family friend who had been living at the house, dead. They didn't give any other details, so we don't know how long the body's been there. Could it line up that it's not him? I think they advised him not to leave and go home, to stay at training camp. And the Giants are aware of the issue. So we'll see. They are treating it as a homicide, which is bad news for him, because you get someone dead.
It's either being strangled or suffocated.
Yeah, which is crazy, because I don't know who...
They did come forward with it and said that...
Did they? That's crazy.
How do you not know who's living in your house?
Well, they said it was a family friend and a house guest, but I don't know. They're investigating it.
But I would think if someone's living in my house, I know what's going on in my house.
Oh, I would agree. If someone's there, you would know, even if you're not home. And I'll say this, I'm a tech guy from background, but you're $1 million athlete. You have to have a camera at your house. You have to have at least one. Like, I can't be the only one that has a couple cameras floating around their house at all times. You're an NFL guy. You're away at camp. You hear the stories about people playing in the Super Bowl, their houses getting robbed, things like that. I understand having a house guest, maybe just hanging out watching your stuff, but you would think that you also have cameras, because you don't want them doing shady things. You go away to practice, they come into your house and sell your items. I don't know. It seems weird. So I would hope that he's not involved.
I'm going to take it a step further.
Go ahead.
I'm taking this a step further, because this isn't 1941. Like, this isn't like players that I'm gonna be an NFL player, and then I'm also going to work as like a beer distributor. Like, these are guys that this is your job. You're being paid millions of dollars, and the NFL is going a step further and investing money in all these financial planners, all these extra speakers, all these different rookie symposiums that are telling you, hey, don't be a derelict and let your creepy uncle take half of your money and invest it in some ant farm in Des Moines, Iowa. Like, be smart with, like, they're being educated so much more now than they were decades ago, that you can't tell me at this point that he didn't know what was going on. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you would get into any situation, unless, like I said, that's just speculation, that it was like a botched robbery. Like, he was house sitting and something happened. The fact that, or I don't even know, it could be a girl, a chick, I don't know. But they're house sitting and they're there and something comes in, they're trying to steal stuff. They didn't expect someone to live there. I don't know. The fact that it was a family friend makes me think that, looking at the positive side, that it could be positive. But I don't know, man. You're right, Matt. Situation, just try to avoid that at all costs. And I don't know, and I know a lot of guys, they don't have family growing up, and they get a bunch of money, and all of a sudden, you're right, you have the crazy uncle that you didn't know show up and start to hang out and do things like that. And that's whenever you have issues. So we're going to keep an eye on that and see what happens before we go into anything further. Let's get into the Steel City update. Man, I talked about it last week. We'll start with the Pirates. I said I didn't know who would have more wins, the Pittsburgh Pirates or the Detroit Tigers at the end of the year. And we all went around, did our little picks. And what happened? Both teams went on a 5-game losing streak. I think Detroit lost again last night, extending theirs to 6. Pittsburgh, they won last night. But sitting here looking at it, the Pirates, 474 winning percentage. It's dropping month by month. They're 4-6 in their last 10, including the 5-game losing streak. It's not looking good. Fan optimism is down. The only thing that's saving the Pirates right now is that they're playing the Mets. And the Mets are even more awful, which I don't understand, because you have the Mets on one hand. They throw money at their team. They're kind of like the Cubs. You throw money at your team. For how many years did the Cubs do that? 100 before they finally win the World Series? And then it seems like, on the other hand, the Yankees can do it. And they're always top of the division, winning. So some organizations, it's not all about throwing money, but I would say this. It would feel nicer if someone was throwing money.
Throwing
at the
smart
Pirates.
money.
Yeah. Well, throwing any, at least you have an exciting team. Like, I'm looking around, and there's some people on the Pirates, and I don't want to call out individuals, but some of them, they shouldn't even be on a major league roster at this point. So we'll see after the All-Star break.
If you can't bat your weight, you shouldn't be in the MLB.
Oh, and it's beyond that. Like, some of the stuff that they have in the Pirates, they're not even trying to bring guys up or bench them. Like, you have guys that just commit errors, can't hit worth a lick. I mean, if I knew that, man, I definitely would have showed up. Spring training, maybe they would have signed me. I could just hit nothing, make a bunch of mistakes on the field, but it can't be good. Can't be good for morale. So I don't want to harp on them. We'll be getting into them because it's a slow period for everyone else anyway. The Pittsburgh Penguins right now. The NHL draft happened. We're going to talk about it a little bit later in the show. Not too much specifics. The big news out of Pittsburgh today was that they signed Brian Rust to a 4-year deal. And speculation news, they're thinking that Kunitz might be coming back. Got some rumors floating around that Crosby's reached out to him and there's mutual interest. But we'll leave it at that. It's free agency time for the Penguins, and we'll see what happens. Are they going to make some moves? Bringing in some guys. I don't know what the Rust deal does exactly to the salary cap, but that's going to play a factor. And it's good. He deserved the extension, so good to see that happened for him. On to the Steelers now. Same contract stuff. Le'Veon Bell. And I had a couple questions on him too, but what are we going to say about him? Le'Veon Bell came out and he said this year contract talks are closer to what he expected. So there's a good chance that he gets signed. And then he also said that the Steelers need to tighten up in the playoffs and things like that. But, bro, if you don't have control of the locker room, you're not going to just be able to tighten up on a whim. So how about you show that you want to win instead of having a contract discussion every year? It's not just a 1-year thing. Sign the contract, get a long-term deal done, or don't at this point. You know what they're going to pay you. You've been doing this for like 3 years in a row. So just don't bring it up. I mean, other than that, go ahead, Matt. You going to say something?
Anytime I hear Le'Veon Bell anymore, it's just like, just shut your mouth and play. Just shut your mouth. The more that he runs his mouth, like he almost makes the shenanigans of Antonio Brown seem minute at this point, because his mouth just runs nonstop. Just shut up. If you just shut up and work out and just increase even if Pittsburgh doesn't pay you, just shut up and perform. And you'll make whatever dollar amount that you want to make in free agency. Walk away. Do what you need to do. Take care of business, and you can sign a mega contract in Washington or whatever other team that's going to spend the money on you. They'll throw money at you, and you can do what you need to do. But if you want to play for a team that's going to consistently be a playoff qualifying team, if you consistently want to get paid, then you stay in Pittsburgh. Because as long as you're there, you're going to be playing on a contender.
Yeah, and at this point, it's hurting fan perception around the country. A few years ago, I would say even like 5 or 6 years ago, people from around the country, you see Steelers fans everywhere. Not the most hated team for some reason. It's always like, yeah, we hate Dallas or we hate New England. But with the contract extensions from Bell and stuff, it's like people can't even stand the Steelers anymore. It's like I would wear Steelers stuff out and about, never get any hate, which is the complete opposite. If I wear Michigan gear, I'll always find some Ohio State guy somewhere. Doesn't matter where I'm at. Disneyland, Disney World, whichever one's in Florida, I don't know the difference. Down there, I'm at the beach, an Ohio State guy pops up, starts yelling obscenities at me, whatever. Crazy. I wear Steelers gear, that doesn't happen. But recently, it's starting to happen because people don't like this kind of prima donna stuff. So it's hurting with outside perception of the Steelers. So I would think that the organization can't be too happy about that. I know it's one thing to get ribbed on by some rivals if I'm wearing Steelers gear in Baltimore, which has happened before. But it's a lot different whenever it's like a random fan because someone will give you a shout out. You're like, hey, who do you like? The Atlanta Falcons. It's like, the Atlanta Falcons? Why do you hate the Steelers? They don't even play. They didn't even play at all. I understand if you're mad at New England after the way the Super Bowl happened. But come on, tighten up the organization because this kind of stuff, it's not helping with perception for fans. And once you get that hated mantra, you're not being hated because you're winning, because that's not what's happening here. You're being hated because people don't like the organization as a whole. And what will happen? You'll turn into the Bengals, or like even what turned into the Cowboys. Cowboys haven't made it to the championship game for decades now, right? I think the last one was the Super Bowl win, right? I don't think they've been in the NFC Championship for decades. We'll have to look that up. But you don't want to become that. You don't want to become a team. You don't want to become a team that no one wants to sign with. Because if the outside perception's there, it's not like Pittsburgh, let's be honest. I love Pittsburgh, but it's not a big nightlife city or a city that's going to draw in a lot of free agent action based on the city itself. Not a lot to offer. Steelers history and the class organization, yes, that can get it done. So let's not ruin that here. Anything else you want to add, Matt, Pittsburgh-wise?
I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head with that stuff. I mean, to me, I just want to get it back to where the Steelers just played ball, where they had guys that were team focused. I mean, when you really saw the upswing in the early 2000s, Ben was young, but they had the Joey Porters, the Hines Wards, the Troy Polamalu's that ran the locker room and maintained that standard and that status of Pittsburgh football, and that we're going to do this as a team and it's us. And I think what you're starting to see is you don't really see it during the regular season because there's enough continuity that it keeps people together. But I think you see it in the playoffs where you start to see some of the strands of the I, me, my, what is someone doing for me? You start to see that selfishness come out in the playoffs. And I think the more team-oriented people end up hurting them. That's why they lost to Jacksonville, because Jacksonville was more team-focused and played together as a team as opposed to a collective group of athletes who had 3 that were ranking in the top, 20 on the NFL top 100 players.
Yeah, I would wager to say you're pretty spot on with your Jacksonville comparison to those early Steeler teams. I would wager to say outside of Pittsburgh area, most people when Ben Roethlisberger that first year, they might have known 3 Steelers. Jerome Bettis, Hines Ward, and Polamalu due to the hair. Outside of that, you don't know a lot of people on that team. You can fire off a Joey Porter, but I would imagine a casual fan outside, because this is before really the fantasy football boom, they're not going to know all the guys on the team. So Jacksonville, the same thing right now. Can you really name a bunch of dudes on their team? No. But if they play like a team, you don't have to worry about that. So I agree with your point. All right. Coming up, going to get outside, stick with football. The 7-on-7s and stuff. I know you've talked about it before. We've talked about it on the show, Matt. But I figure slow season. Nike has their own football brand, Nike Football, and they do a thing called The Opening. And I believe the finals are this weekend, correct?
I think so. I haven't really been following it that closely, to be honest.
So they've started to do this a few years ago, and it's caught some flack due to the comparison to college basketball. And before I get started, I do want to say, I don't want to forget to mention it, but what's the circuit court? One of the circuit courts have overruled. There was a lawsuit by a former player trying to get it marked as illegal that you can transfer without sitting out a year. But the courts ruled in favor of the NCAA instead of the athletes. So they said that due to antitrust laws, the NCAA can force students to sit out a year, and something with residency does not matter. So you can't, like if you live there for a year, you can't say, I don't know, something with the rules. The court basically said that the NCAA can keep restricting transfers if they want. Now, the rumor before this came down was that they were going to do away with it, and they might even do away with one and dones. I think the NBA put out a notice and said 2020, get ready because the one and dones might be done in the NBA. You might be able to draft kids right out of high school again, or whatever they decide to do. But I think pretty sure the transfer rule was in effect, that the NCAA said, hey, we're going to let you transfer without sitting out a year. But now that the court has ruled in favor of the NCAA, I wonder if they're going to take that back. And I don't know if it was official or not. I just saw that the ruling had came down. So I'll be sending out some stuff. Follow us on Twitter, SBound Sports. I'll be putting this out because it's a storyline that I'll follow pretty closely, working around higher education. So it's a big deal. If you're an athlete and you commit somewhere, let's say you're buying into the Alabama gets a quarterback every year, one of the top guys. He's not going to play. They're not getting a guy drafted every year. You look at what happened with Jalen Hurts. What's his deal? Is he able to transfer? No. I mean, I guess he could. He could sit out a year. So really, how does that help him?
Or he could drop down to a lower level division or junior college and go that route.
Yeah, but he's a top recruit. I mean, did they win a national championship with him? I mean, he's a national championship winning quarterback, whether it was last year or the year before. I don't know if he started that game. So it's not like another team wouldn't take him. Like Oregon right now, I would imagine they would eat it up trying to get him. Baylor, some of the other teams that run even like a spread run and gun like Baylor does, or did. I don't know if they still do after they got rid of Bryles. But that's the kind of guy that you would want on your team. So I don't know what it's going to matter at that point. But I wanted to mention that before we got into the opening. So the opening is something cool. And I don't know, if you're a football fan right now and you want something to watch, check this out. So they do a couple different events. Now, I don't think we even mentioned it last year, but it helps with the college football recruiting. How they assign stars, just some background knowledge, is if you're a high school recruit, you got to go to camps and you got to perform, and there are scouts there, and then they rate your performance. Well, Nike kind of put together the best of the best, where you can go to kind of like a tryout thing, basically an NFL combine version for high school, where you do certain jumps, bench press, things like that, and they give you
in different cities.
Yeah,
in different cities.
It starts in cities, and if you get a good enough score near your hometown, like wherever, I don't know if they're done on college campuses or what, then you can get an invite to regionals. And then it's sort of like track. You do go to regionals and you do your performance. It's called their skills competition. I don't know what if they have a name for it, but they do a skills competition, and they go out, and a lot of guys get their ratings for athleticism based on this. You run the 40-yard dash, I believe. You jump. They do some other skill stuff. If you're a quarterback, you do some throwing. The one thing that I really like that they did is they do a lineman challenge. So the Final Five lineman challenge is they match up guys that go through skills and do some one-on-ones. I think I remember watching them last year, and I'll find some vids and I'll blow up our Twitter and stuff this week with videos leading up to it. But I believe they didn't even have pads. They're pretty much just watching leverage, kind of like a hand fight, sumo wrestle. And you're seeing the best of the best recruits. So let's say you're a 5-star recruit from Georgia or whatever, and you always see the comparison. Well, what if we're a school in Tennessee? How do we know that Georgia has better football than us? You get your regionals, and here in the finals, you can see that. You can see the best lineman from Tennessee go up against the best lineman from South Carolina. And it's a cool thing that normally, whenever you're looking at recruiting, quarterbacks get all the stars. Linemen usually get based on size. If we're being honest, it's basically who's 6'7", 300 pounds, and doesn't get winded after running 10 yards. That's how lineman recruiting. That's how it used to go. You know that's true. So now you're seeing more athletic defensive linemen, like the guys when the SEC really boomed. That's how they made their living. They were getting guys that played linebacker in high school or whatever, and were able to bulk them up, and they were getting very strong and fast defensive linemen. So to challenge that, you have to go ahead and you have to get offensive linemen that can challenge them. So Nike kind of filled that void. They went ahead and put it in.
But with Nike,
yeah, go ahead.
With the way Nike's doing this, they're not just grabbing your average high school. These are the kids that are being invited to these. These are the elite of the elite. These are the top 300 on ESPN. These are the cream of the crop, so to speak. They're the kids that you can turn their video on and say, pick the kid that's going to be highly recruited out of this video. And instantly, when you turn the video on, they say, oh, yeah, it's that kid. That's the very slim majority of prospects. The most high school athletes that end up earning scholarships, they're what you call camp kids. So they're kids that if I want to go to, say, Pitt or Penn State or Temple in Pennsylvania, what I might have to do is I may have to find out when do they have their individual player, camp, and go out and work out and do those things to try to earn a scholarship, so that then I start gaining the attention and the traction that now if I work out at all 3 of those camps and I got 3 offers, now I can start leveraging that to, say, maybe an Ohio State or a West Virginia, and start saying, well, hey, I'm already offered by Pitt and Penn State. What can you do? And if I'm good enough for those schools, then maybe one of those other programs might be enough to say, well, they're getting looked at by these other schools. Maybe this is a player we need to look at as well. And that's how they gain traction to where they're being invited to some of these camps.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because it is an invite process. But I will say this, they do give an opportunity to other guys that generally might be overlooked. Some of the guys that I've seen, and I think it's called, I don't know if they pronounce it as Spark Score. I think it's SPARQ. And that's off the top of my head. But I do know a couple kids that rated high that weren't getting looks at one of the regional camps. And then, of course, what happens is, like Matt said, you get the offers coming in. So you're a kid, you get no stars. You go and you get a high Spark Score. Next thing you know, you're getting invited to regionals. And they're classifying you as a 4-star recruit. I can't think of the kid's name, but there is a kid that never played football before that fit the lineman mold that they were touting this year. That same thing. Tested off, athleticism was off the charts, big kid, and no stars. Offers started to just pour in due to this. So another one would be kids that play basketball generally. I think, was it a tight end this year or a defensive end? Someone who had played basketball and, again, hasn't played football, decided to go to one of these for some reason, or maybe a coach just said, hey, you should go there and see what your scores are, tests out of the park, and now he's getting looks at one of those positions I named, either D end or tight end. So this is a way, if you're a high school kid and you're looking to get your name out there and you don't want to pay for all the camps. Now, granted, it's going to be purely athleticism at first. So if you should know yourself. If you're in the weight room and you can't put up a bunch of reps, or you're not the fastest on your team, you're probably going to be better, like Matt said, to go to a camp on a campus of a school that you want to attend. But if you don't have a lot of game film and you think you can put up numbers and compete, this is a good way to get your name out there. I mean, just this past, I think, was it 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, both Michigan and Alabama offered like middle schoolers. I think the one kid was like 6'7", 300 pounds, similar to what I made the joke earlier about. You had to just be big and be able to run 10 yards at a pop without having a heart attack, and then they'd put you in the offensive line. But truth be told, that still happens. There's no reason an 8th grader should be getting an Alabama football offer. And is it committable at this point? I don't know. I mean, if he balloons up to 500 pounds, do you really think they're going to take him on the field? Hell no. So, I don't know. But Matt, you work closely to this. I do like how they do they add in, so they do have a 7-on-7 competition, which I believe is, we shared a promo for that today. Is that what that was? Or was that the quarterback skills competition? Because they have two. I can't remember now. But whenever you work with primarily quarterbacks, so what kind of tips can you give to kids that are looking to get recruited at that position?
For the kids that are looking to get promoted to that position, I think the biggest thing is understand that regardless of what scheme you run, it doesn't matter. Like if you're an I, if you're a Veer, if you're West Coast, whatever it is, if you can identify who the open guy is, they're gonna find you and you're gonna be recruited. If you can throw the ball to the person that you're supposed to throw to, that's the name of the game. If you can complete passes, what I see as the most difficult thing is that kids think, well, because of my scheme, I'm being held back, or because of this, or because of that. The bottom line is the talent. The first thing that a lot of these colleges are looking for is the size. So you have to naturally, if you're not at least 6 foot right off the bat, you're being hurt. You're being put at a disadvantage. There's the outlier people like the Drew Brees, who's right at 6 foot, and the shorter Doug Flutys. But usually, if you're not up and over, between 6'3" and 6'5", most people are not really giving you a fair look at quarterback. You better have arm strength and everything else down the line. One of the things that I saw actually was mechanically, and I think that's where a lot of quarterbacks will get turned away in the process, is having poor throwing mechanics. I saw Coach Chaney, when he was at Pitt, give a presentation about the throwing mechanics of quarterbacks, and he said within usually 2 or 3 throws, he evaluates a quarterback to tell if it's a quarterback that he would be interested in working with or offering, because he knows if they don't have the fundamentals and they don't have the footwork, if that stuff is flawed and it's stuff that's already been learned, it's tough to untrain that stuff. So it's tough for him to work with that person. And I agree. I think if you have bad fundamentals, then everything else that you're doing is going to be tough to come by. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, that's very true, because you can see what happened with Tim Tebow. I mean, he came in, poor mechanics, let's be honest, and for some reason he was too headstrong. I think he would have been awesome even a tight end, or basically as an H-back, he would have been unstoppable. But he stuck with it. He decided, what did he do? He went and got someone to try to fix his mechanics, but at that point, it's too late. So definitely, if you're a young guy, listen to your coach, try to get the mechanics down, because that can make the world of difference, especially at the high school level going into the college level. If you don't have the size, like Matt said, you got to be realistic with yourself. I'm only 6'1". I had a good feeling when I was in middle school that I was never going to play in the NBA. Like you just know that that's not in the cards for you. Much like I would know that I'm not going to be a professional sumo wrestler unless I had to put on some major bulk. It's just not going to happen. You don't have that body type. Matt always said he wanted to be a luge in the Olympics, but that's kind of realistic because you don't know. Anyone could lay on a board, but for some sports, you have to go ahead and have the body type. There's nothing you can do. That's just genetics. Now, at 6 foot, could I have bulked up and maybe tried to be a fullback? Yeah, that's a possibility. So be realistic and be open to changing positions. I do like the 7-on-7s. I like how they have the competition because you can see some guys. I think the worst part is you always see, and it really hurts West Virginia area south of Pittsburgh, where you come from a small state, kind of like Randy Moss did. If you watch his 30 for 30, it's a great insight into him. When you're coming from a small area like that, you can think you're the man. Anyone that's a little bit athletic in a small town is going to be the man. And once you get up there and it's a whole different world, you get to camp on some other campus, you might not be the man anymore. So these little camps can be real eye-openers for guys that come from smaller schools. So I encourage it. I've been following it for a couple of years now. I think there was an O-line recruit. I'll have to look and see if I can find it up. Maybe I'll use it as a footnote next week if I can remember. But I remember his tape came out and he got dusted at the lineman camp at the opening here. And 5-star guy, I think they took a star away from him after his performance because once he matched up against a couple 5-star defensive linemen, he got absolutely dusted. Didn't lose any scholarship offers over it. And it's a curious case. I'll have to see if I can find it. I don't think Nike would be publicizing how their camp led to the downfall of one recruit. But I'll see if I can find it. I remember it from maybe 2 years ago. But it would be a good insight into see how just different people from different spots match up. And sometimes it hurts you. Sometimes it helps you. So you kind of have to just play it by ear. And if you're just a football fan, definitely check it out, especially if you're a college football fan, because it will play a part in the rankings. If you're a quarterback that has 3 or 4 stars and you make it to the Elite 11 finals, you better believe that your rating is going to shoot through the roof, especially if you're out showing other guys. I think one of the guys, the big news from the Big Ten was that Michigan State lost a quarterback recruit to Ohio State, and I think they're performing at this camp here. So, of course, if you make the last 11 and you're committed to Michigan State, that's a huge drop for them because you know this guy, he already went through the tests, he has the skills, and it's certainly not late in the recruiting period. He could always flip back or whatever, but losing him to Ohio State has to sting, an in-conference, in-division rival. So it's a big thing. Anything else you want to add, Matt, before we move on?
The one thing that absolutely, the one thing that I did want, it's the plus and the minus. On the plus side, for these 7-on-7s, if you're doing it as part of your high school program, like actually today, we got involved with 3 other local schools and did some 7-on-7 work, and I loved it because it was a great opportunity for the kids that showed up to get some on-field work as a team, running the offense that we're going to be running when the season rolls around. And I think that you can't really simulate game reps, but you can put kids in different positions, and you can put them in positions to see who's going to be successful. Maybe there's like an offensive lineman that shows up, and you see, well, are they athletic enough maybe to play linebacker that you normally wouldn't think under normal circumstances, why put them there? But in 7-on-7 season, it doesn't hurt you to put them in a place that maybe they show their athleticism, and it gives them an opportunity to play in another position. I think in those cases, I like 7-on-7 because you can play around with different configurations of people to see who's best. How does it fit? Where I don't like 7-on-7, and there's 2 cases. One of them are the teams that they use it as, I'm going to run something completely different than what my normal offense is. So for some teams, especially in this Western Pennsylvania area, you have teams that I'm going to run 5 wide empty sets, and they're going to use up every second of the play clock, kind of like almost cheating, where it's I'm going to look around and use up all the time, and then at the last second just chuck it deep. And knowing that they have a skill guy that they want to put against a lesser talented athlete, and they're going to try to just score touchdowns and run points up. To me, that's not really helping the team at all, because once the season rolls around, you've never seen a particular school in an empty set, but now they're doing all this just to try to be competitive. I don't like that aspect. And the other part was I hated to see, and I saw this video at least 4 different times retweeted, where a commit from Nebraska was at one of these combines and was grabbing a wide receiver by the throat and threw him down. I don't know if you saw this or not.
No, I missed that.
But he was in like playing press coverage, and it was like in one of those combine type settings where they're doing one-on-ones, and instead of like working the coverage and the technique, he like essentially grabbed the wide receiver and like picked him up and choke slammed him or body slammed him. I understand that at these combines there's a lot at stake. There's scholarships, there's family changing dynamics at place, but for a kid that I think was a 3-star commit to Nebraska, doing that to a wide receiver that it didn't increase his character value. It didn't do anything to improve his stock. I wasn't impressed by it. I thought it really took away from what was going on. And I don't like that aspect of some of these individualized camps, because it's celebrating the me instead of the we that we really want to try to promote, especially with football and athletics, because I think far too often we're going too much into the individualized stuff instead of the important stuff of developing leadership and the team aspect that we're missing in today's game.
Yeah, those are some good points. I didn't even think about that stuff. I do remember what you're talking about when I played even years ago in high school, where you'd have the 7-on-7s, and I would consider it poor coaching, where the coach just throws out all kind of crazy passing routes when I think it should be used for more development, because who cares if you win at 7-on-7 camps? That's, to me, I didn't even think about that aspect, but I guess some coaches just want to win or whatever to increase their visibility. But when season happens, you know it's not going to help them, because you saw it every year. Teams that would do well in 7-on-7s, running empty sets, running all kind of weird motions and triplets and stuff like that. Regular season rolls around, they're a power I team. Didn't help them one lick. So
absolutely.
I 100%
well,
agree,
and here's the case. Here's a classic case in point story. We were at a 7-on-7 tournament last year, and our kids, it was one of those games where it didn't matter what I called. They were getting deep and they were scoring touchdowns, and it was like, at what point do you want to start rotating kids in and getting younger kids work? So we started putting some younger kids in. We really weren't paying attention to the score as much as we should have, because I look at 7-on-7 as I want to see who are my athletes, what can they do. If we walk out with everyone getting reps, then it's a feather in our cap. It's a good day's worth of work. The wins and losses can come and go, because no one really gives a crap what happens during 7-on-7 season. Well, as things played out during this particular game, we ended up losing on a last-second Hail Mary by a team. Well, as luck would have it, part of my post-game talk to the team was, if you handle your business, and when the pads come on, you take care of business, no one's going to care if you beat them in the playoffs that you lost to them today. And lo and behold, the school's very first home playoff game, we hosted the team that we lost to during that summer 7-on-7. So all I had to do is walk out and said, "Hey guys, this is your opportunity. This is where I said you either win and you own up to it, or we take that L." But of course we came out and we won. And after that game, everyone was so excited. It was like, remember, here we are in the postseason where it matters, as compared to that little bit of suffering that we suffered over the summer, where no one cares because it's 7-on-7 season, and understanding the bigger picture of what we're doing and getting better for that moment, I think helped our kids.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool insight into that. So that pretty much wraps up our chat on that. We have a couple extra topics today to get to. And I just combined them, the NBA and NHL draft. The Penguins had only 4 players drafted, so it's nothing like NHL draft to me. Isn't like the NBA or NFL draft. It veers more towards the MLB draft to me, where they made some picks. Are they going to make immediate impacts? That's not really how the NHL works, unless it's a top guy, like when the Penguins got Crosby. But they drafted defenseman Calen Addison in the second round. Also got a forward, Philip Hollander, in the second round as well. And I'm probably butchering these names. Justin Almeida in the 5th round, he's a forward. And Liam Gorman in the 6th round, an extra forward. So definitely forward heavy for the Penguins. And we'll see. The big thing for the Penguins is not so much how they did in the draft. It's what they're going to do here in free agency and building a team. I would have liked them to get another defenseman, but hey, maybe they're set on Addison and think that he can do a good job, and that's all they needed. So we'll see how that goes. The NBA draft, whole different beast. A lot of star power. Like I said, they're looking at getting rid of the one and dones, which means the NBA would have to have kids straight out of high school in the draft, which is going to make it a whole nother bit of excitement added. And you're looking at similar to what the opening is in 7-on-7s. Then you'll have kids that make a living based on these skills camps for NBA if that happens. I don't think it will carry over to the NFL just due to the nature of the league and how you kind of have to have physical maturity that you don't get in the other leagues. But we'll see. I did like the NBA. A lot of kids had their college team inside of their jackets. So as they walked out, they flashed it. I saw Mo Wagner from Michigan had Michigan on one side, and I think he had his German team on the other. And a lot of other kids did something similar. So I thought that was a cool way for them to express themselves. As you know, they have to put on the professional face of wearing their suits. Did I really watch the draft? Nah. But good to see Mo Wagner get drafted. I think Michigan's 3rd or 4th and 5th round draft pick since 2013. Maybe 5th. I don't even know, but that's crazy considering at that same time, Beeline has never signed a McDonald's All-American. And he's had 6 people drafted or 7 people. I don't even know the right number. I guess I should have brought in the extra stats. I thought I would remember it, but of course I didn't once we get into all the football stuff. But very cool for Coach Beeline. And just watching the draft, you have any thoughts on either of those, Matt?
I was a little bit surprised that the Sixers gave up their number 10 to not only receive Zaire Smith, but also the unprotected 2021 first-round selection from Miami. I kind of thought with where they were, I just thought they were a young team. I was kind of surprised that they traded away a little bit. I think maybe they're trying to push some chips in the LeBron sweepstakes, but I think they have the cap space that they maybe could go after someone else, maybe get a little bit of depth. Surprisingly, I thought Bridges could have helped them, but obviously I don't know what the process has. You just have to trust it.
Yeah, NBA.
But I did kind of share your sentiments as far as both of those drafts.
Yeah, the NBA, I was surprised. A lot of people said the Celtics were going to move up, but they ended up not. And you're looking at contrasting sides there. The 76ers, they're kind of out of picks. I mean, in the future, whenever you're looking at it from a grand scheme of where they're rebuilding compared to the Celtics, where everyone thought Danny Ainge was going to trade them, get rid of picks in the future, but he kept them all and got a guy that fell due to reasons I don't even remember why he fell. A guy from A&M who was slotted as a lottery pick, and it's looking like the Celtics are able to rebuild through the draft. And we had a comment that Hockey News has the Pittsburgh Penguins ranked as one of the lowest farm systems. And yeah, they're right. You have to build through free agency if you're going to try to keep guys around. And eventually, I don't know what they're going to do when you don't have draft picks like this year. you can't do what Bill Belichick does for the Patriots. You can't trade down and trade picks and stack up on youth. At some time, there's going to have to be a turnover for youth. If you want to keep Crosby, let's say they have to pick one, Crosby or Malkin, you probably keep Crosby. But if they're trying to keep both of them together for an extended run, there's going to have to be a year of turnover where you try to get youth into the farm system. I mean, it probably gives Pittsburgh fans chills hearing that that's what the Pirates do every offseason. Hey, we got to get some youth in the system. But
no, but I don't necessarily think with the NHL that you have to, because I think when you look at the NHL and the way that their collective bargaining and everything happens,
true,
you see so many superstar players move around in the NHL from year to year that even looking at the players that Pittsburgh has been able to acquire at the trade deadline over the last 5 or 6 years, it's been amazing that you would never see the equivalent of superstar players transferring, like a Phil Kessel to Pittsburgh. Like, that wouldn't happen in the NFL. You couldn't see like Devontae Freeman being traded to Pittsburgh and boosting the running back core. When Le'Veon Bell goes down with a hamstring injury in week 8, like you don't see that happen, but you will in the NHL because of the way that the contracts and things are set up with their collective bargaining.
I guess I have nightmares from down here when I look at the Carolina Hurricanes, how they won the Cup like years ago. They had Cam Ward. They still had Cam Ward for decades. They tried to bring in free agents, and they just never had the back end talent to help fill those extra lines. When you don't have that, you're kind of right around a borderline playoff team. I think they made it a few years. The one year they got eliminated, I think, by the Penguins on the way to the Penguins Stanley Cup run. Was that 2008, possibly? That's getting on a decade here, so my facts might be a little foggy. But after that, I don't think the Hurricanes have made a playoff since. I think that I don't know if that's one of, if not the longest streak. So that's like the downside to not backfilling and trying to get extra talent. Can you keep reloading on free agents? Possibly, especially if you have a star power like Crosby. But somewhere down the line, I mean, just looking at the Steelers too, when you have an aging star, what's going to happen? Because when they're gone and they're doing a lot of heavy lifting, David Carr doesn't think Ben Roethlisberger's doing the heavy lifting. But most likely, he is. So when he's gone, what's going to happen? Well, God forbid Crosby leaves or retires early, pulls a Barry Sanders on us. I mean, where would the Penguins be? Would they be competitive for a few years?
You get in the John Tavares sweepstakes. John Tavares is a free agent right now. He's been shot by everyone. He's been sucking with the Islanders. He's ready. He's ready to go to a winner. Just tell him, hey, you can get rings.
True. They do have that to prove. But now you have a budding rivalry. October 4th kicks back off, opening with Penguins Capitals, I believe, is how that surprise. Not like I predicted that 3 weeks ago or anything. I knew that was going to happen. You knew they have a rivalry here. They've been waiting. They've been begging for it for a decade now. Ovechkin, Crosby. Now they can show the cups in their promo because that's a big thing. And I wouldn't be surprised on the Cup Summer Tour if that's like a feature of the NHL. Last year I did come over to the Hurricanes. They had their celebration. I did go over to their hockey days and check it out. It actually corresponded with something that NC State was doing for their football. It was like a summer jam or something. But got to see the Cup and just see the depressed fans in the area here in Raleigh who haven't had a winning hockey season. So that's what I look at when I see the draft. Is it going to help a team like that? No. Like, I don't see, unless even if you tanked in the NHL, there's not going to be enough excitement around one guy every year. I mean, it's a once-in-a-generation talent like when Crosby came around. That infused energy into Pittsburgh, and that doesn't happen in every draft. And I don't think it happened in this draft either. And it's not a slight on the top couple picks, but, I mean, you have to have a star stud. Think about like when LeBron came in. Has there been an NBA guy like that? Hell no. Look, the Cavs had like 2 other first overall number 1 picks, and
Kobe.
both of them were busts. Yeah, that's what, 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago. It's only one in a handful of drafts that you have a guy like that. So, I mean, even like, what do you think about Fultz with the 76ers? Do you think that was the right pick last year?
Yes. All things considered, at the time, it was the right pick.
Yeah, and I mean,
The end.
overall, would you have rather that been a different year when they had a chance at LeBron? Like, you only have so many guys. You kind of got to take, like you said, the end at that time. That was the pick. So that's what you're looking at. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah. No, I think we're good.
All right. Finishing up here. I'll get on to my World Cup wrap up. Dude, I predicted that Poland and Colombia was going to be the game to watch, and instead it turned into a bloodbath as Colombia won 3-0 and moved on. So there were a lot more exciting games. I think the other game, was it today? Argentina and Nigeria. I'm getting all my games mixed up. But the one guy, like the legend, and of course I don't know my soccer history too well, but the legend from Argentina, he's like the godfather there. He flipped the big double birds to the camera. So crazy that would happen. I didn't think Argentina was going to move on. I honestly thought Iceland would have a better chance, but they got destroyed in that group. So some of the teams that I thought would have a chance, the reason I had thought Poland might keep it close is they had the third scorer behind Messi and Ronaldo in the Europe leagues. So you have one of the top scorers, the third guy. You would just think that kind of star would be able to have the impact that Ronaldo would have for Poland, especially against lesser teams like Senegal. And it's not a knock on them, but they played more like a team, and Poland didn't. Even though I don't even know how to pronounce the name. I'm going to butcher it. Lewandowski. He predicted that he was going to have a ton of goals this World Cup. Didn't have anything. So if you watch that game, Fox thought it was going to be the one too, because they promoted it and put it as their headline game on Sunday, which I didn't think that they had. I think last week I thought it was at 11 or so, but they've had it on at 2, their primetime game, and it was pretty much a dud. But we'll see. The group stages are pretty much finishing up here this week if they haven't already. And they'll have a clearer picture. It just sucks that the United States not in it. It's hard to get into it here in stateside. But we do have the bright side that the World Cup is going to be in the United States in 2026. So I'll be there no matter what. I'm definitely attending. But that's it for me this week. Matt, you have anything, final wrap up, final bell?
For the sake of Southbound Sports, I sucked it up and I tried to watch the World Cup. I watched a couple games. First off, snaps to Messi, scoring in his teens, his 20s, his 30s. He'll probably still be playing in his 40s, and I bet he'll score another goal. Salute. Good for him. That's awesome. Also, when I watched England just pummel Panama, it made me just think, how the hell, United States of America, the people that take all the riffraff from south of the border, that sneak into our country illegally, how do you not qualify for the World Cup? Are you out of your mind? Like, it's the most insane thing I've seen. We're a country of riffraffs and cast-offs. You would think that we should always qualify for every World Cup, for every Olympics, for everything that's on a world stage. We should be there. We have the best of the best from everywhere. Let's go. And it infuriated me watching how poor some of these teams were to think we couldn't even qualify against these assholes.
Well, I will say, I was thinking the same thing, and I actually kind of did a little bit of research. I forgot to bring it up, but medals, just basically the Olympics. I was thinking the same thing. How can we be so good at almost every other sport? There's like 30 something, 40 sports in the Olympics, and the United States has overall number one ranking in about 15 of them. So almost half. Let's say there's like 35, 40. I don't have the exact numbers here. I'm just looking at the chart. We're number 2 and like looks like 7 more, and then number 3 and another 4. And then after that, we kind of get dropped. Where our lowest, 15th, is judo. Like, no shit, we don't have people just practicing judo here. But the rest of the sports, yeah, we can win in basically everything. And, of course, now this is Wikipedia. They combine men and women's soccer. Our combined soccer is number 1 in the world, but not our men's. Our women's are so good that they're carrying the whole country to get us ranked number 1. But if you look at the men's side, we're nowhere close. So I don't know. It's crazy. And you brought up Messi. I love Ronaldo. And so I was laughing because before Argentina, it looked like they might be eliminated. His mother, Lionel Messi's mother, came out and said that her son has been deeply affected by criticism of his performances, and he wants nothing more than to win the World Cup. So he's like, however old you said he was, 30s, 40s. And his mom had to come out and make a statement because there are rumors that he was crying after the game because he did so bad and he thought people were going to be harsh on him. So what kind of guy would be crying after a poor performance? You would think that he would want to go out there and, practice or try to win. Could you imagine if...
He is their entire team.
Well, could you imagine after Peyton Manning's one of his playoff losses if he was just in the locker room crying and his dad had to come out and make a statement? Hey guys, Peyton's really trying to sort us out there. He did when they drafted Eli. He came out and was like, "Oh, he will not go to San Diego. We don't want that sunshine beaming on his fair skin. We need him to go somewhere where we can market him as a great quarterback." Like, pull it out your ass. That's what that reminded me of. It's like Peyton Manning's dad, Lionel Messi's mom. I don't know too much about Argentina soccer, except that they used to be good. I don't think they're gonna win. Here's to hoping my man Ronaldo pulls one off. I think he won the UEFA, the European Championships, 2 years ago. I remember
he's won like
it.
everything but the World Cup.
Yeah, let him get it. He's a man-child out there. Plus, he had like 4 goals within the first 2 games. So if I want to watch a champion play, that's a guy. He just put his team on his back and said, "Listen, guys, we're going to get this done." So he advanced. That's the only guy I'm watching. So, well, I'll definitely be keeping updated. If he gets eliminated, I'll be heartbroken. So I'm really pulling for him. Anything else you want to add on the show to wrap it up? I don't even know how long we went because we started late.
No, I tell you what, that may be. I don't really have a horse in this race, but maybe I will start rooting for Portugal just so that he's won everything else. Why the hell not?
Plus, it's a country. Most people think they probably speak Spanish. So, I mean, let's give them some limelight. And with that, we'll end the show. Follow us, Southbound Sports, on Facebook and Instagram, S-Bound Sports on Twitter. And we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.